Alright, hello people. It's time for another Rant review. Today we're going to be talking about The Martian. Matt Damon, decidedly Matt Damon picture. About... I don't even know. I mean, it feels like it wants to be a space disaster movie, but it ends up being, look at all this cool science movie. I mean, like, the very beginning of the movie and the very end of the movie feel like a space disaster movie. And there are bits in between where things happen and he has to react to it. But the vast majority of it is, look at all this cool stuff I can do on Mars. You know what I mean? Like, he's like the MacGyver of Mars, basically. That's what it feels like. It's more of a this is what smart people can do given all these limitations. That's what it feels like, as opposed to his life is being threatened on a minute-to-minute basis by a series of disasters and he has to survive. The vast majority of the movie, he's not really in any immediate danger. I mean, the vast majority of the movie. He's already solved all the problems. He's just in his habitat, coping with being alone and, like, doing random crap. Like, it doesn't feel like a space disaster movie for the vast majority of the movie. Is that bad? I don't know. It depends on what you wanted out of the movie, I guess. I don't know. There you go. Do I recommend the movie? It feels long. This thing's like over 2 hours long, and it feels long. There are good moments, but even the triumph in the end, the big climax in the end, when they come back and it's like heroes return and all that, it doesn't feel anywhere near as good as a million other space movies. I mean, like Apollo 13. Like, the end of that movie was fucking amazing. When everything comes together and they're rescued and all that. There's a million other space movies that did the big climax better than this one. This is a very, very slow burn. And the payoff really isn't that big. So I don't know. I don't know, honestly, if I'd recommend this one. The long version with the spoilers. Punching holes in this one is going to be difficult because I know jack about the science and how it would work in space and all this other stuff. I mean, I can say a lot of stuff sounds unrealistic, but I'm not a scientist. I have no idea. It seems to me that you couldn't actually use Martian soil to make viable food. Wouldn't we have heard of that by now? Right? Like, I mean, they talk about Mars all the damn time, and is there water there? And, can we colonize? You'd think you would have heard of that. That would be a big deal, that you could use Mars soil to grow actual food for humans. But he does it like it's nothing. I mean, they make it out to be this big deal, but really all he is planting stuff in dirt. That's it. He grabs some soil, he sticks it on the ground, he puts some potatoes in there, and he sprinkles it with water. I mean, it's nothing... It's not innovative. It's just planting. I mean, really, the only interesting thing here is that he can use Mars soil to plant human food. And like I said, if you could do that, you'd think we'd know about that by now. We'd have heard about it. So maybe it's completely untrue. I honestly don't know. But it doesn't feel like anything new or interesting, or it just feels really unrealistic because we should have heard about it by now. I don't know. The big action scenes. The one in the beginning when the initial disaster happens, there's a sandstorm and you can't really see anything, and they just kind of decide to leave without him, and it's over more or less before it even begins. Nothing really happens. The drama there isn't in the scene itself, it's in that he got left behind. They thought he was dead, or at least they assumed he was dead, and they literally just left him on Mars. And the habitat that was there is only meant to last, I think they say, 30 days. So they think that even if he wasn't dead, he's dead. They can't come back for him, apparently. At that point, they didn't know that he had another way to get back into space, I guess. They figured out later in the movie, but, I mean, really, at the end of the day, all they do is turn the ship around, come back for him. He uses a old piece of tech that's on Mars already to blast back into space, and they pick him up. If it was that easy, you'd think they could have turned around, a third of the way into the movie instead of 4/5 of the way into the movie or whatever. Maybe they had to go to Earth to turn around for some... I don't know. Again, I don't know how space travel works. Whatever. So, the beginning disaster really isn't anything interesting. The other big disaster on Mars is when he blows up his own habitat. They didn't really explain how it happened. He takes credit for it and says that it was his fault. But if they explain what actually happened, why it blew up, I must have missed it somehow. He goes into the habitat, goes into the airlock, and it just explodes. It looked like it was something like freak accident, something completely random, but he made it sound like it was something he did. But you don't really get any explanation for it, so you can't really sink your teeth into it. You can't really think about it because there is no explanation. It's just a random occurrence, as far as the movie is concerned. And then the big rescue at the end, where again there's kind of a disaster where he the most ridiculous way to get into space I've ever seen. They like strip down this module, which it doesn't even look like a space shuttle. I don't know how this thing. I don't know why it was left on Mars, and I don't know why it's working the way they're using it, because it looks more like the leftovers of a space shuttle. Right? It doesn't look like a real viable, launch yourself into space thing, but it works. They strip it down, they remove like the top of it, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Maybe that would work. They put like a tarp on top of the spaceship while it's launching into space. It's literally just a tarp covering the top of the spaceship, and all the windows are completely gone. The only reason he survives is he's in a spacesuit. Which, by the way, why did he have so much oxygen? Right, like, he launches into space, that takes time, right? They have to catch up to him while he's in space, that takes time. And then when they finally do catch up to him, the way he averts the new problem, disaster, whatever you want to call it, that could have happened, him being lost in space, he, like, punctures his own spacesuit and uses the oxygen in his spacesuit as, like, a jet to fire himself through space. I would assume that would work, because it's decompressing and the air is being pushed out, and I would assume it'd give him like some form of propulsion or whatever. But wouldn't he already be low on oxygen at this point? I mean, did they ever explain in the movie where he's getting all this oxygen from? They say he has like O2 scrubbers, but in every other space movie I've ever seen, the O2 scrubbers do not last forever. They don't last for over a freaking year. I think this ends up being like a year and a half before he finally gets rescued. And he's having absolutely no oxygen problems. Seems like he has a limitless supply. And even at the end of the movie, where all he has is the supply of oxygen in his spacesuit, that's all he has access to, because the ship itself has no windows, no doors, no top, no nothing. It's just open to space. That thing lasts him enough to get him into space, to meet up with a space shuttle, which takes a significant amount of time, and then enough oxygen left to puncture it and use the oxygen to shoot himself through space. They never make a big deal about his oxygen. It just seems really weird. For that to be such a huge deal in every other space movie, that's one of the big threats, running out of oxygen. They don't use it here at all. I think the only time it even comes up is when he breaks his helmet and he just duct tapes the helmet, and that's it. I mean, it's not like a countdown to, I'm about to die because I'm going to run out of oxygen, or he starts becoming hypoxic or whatever. That never really happens throughout the entire movie. It's strange. It's like, nope, I just got oxygen covered. And then the whole planting on Mars thing, he plants indoors, and luckily the habitat has this giant ass sunroof. Otherwise, none of this would have worked. He wouldn't have been able to plant anything. I'm assuming it's just plot convenience. I don't know why they'd build a habitat with these giant, massive glass roof, where like anything that could go wrong probably would. But it gives him his sunlight, apparently. Does sunlight still work that far from the sun? I mean, is it enough sunlight to, feed the plants, chlorophyll or whatever? Does it make it that far into space? I don't know. I have no idea. He doesn't seem to have any problem with it. He comes up with this ridiculously convoluted way to get water. I mean, oxygen, no problem. But water, holy shit. I mean, he's got to go crazy MacGyver on it. He creates some kind of ignition source, and then he's stripping molecules into hydrogen and oxygen or something. Or no. He's stripping it from something in hydrogen, separating them into just the hydrogen. And then he's burning the hydrogen to create water vapor, or whatever. And then he's got these tarps surrounding the inside of the habitat, and it's collecting all the water. I don't know. But it's so convoluted, the way he gets water. And then he's using human manure, which, by the way, you would think if you could do that, yet again, we would have heard of it by now. People would be doing that to create food. you don't use human manure to create food. Or at least I've never heard of it. I mean, I would assume it works because it is manure, but there's got to be a reason people don't just do that. I mean, like, you would think. But he does that and then creates food out of human crap, basically. And and survives on, I think it's just potatoes for over a year. That doesn't sound very nutritious. Again, I don't know if potatoes have every vitamin and mineral you need to survive for over a year, but he does. And then he blows up the habitat and loses all his food. So they have to drastically rethink their rescue mission, right? They were going to send this supply shuttle into orbit and shoot it off to Mars, and it's going to get there in I think they said something like 200 days at some point or something like that. But in their rush, they skip the safety procedures or whatever, and it turns out that one of the supplies turns to liquid and throws off the weight, and with the weight thrown off, the trajectory gets thrown off, and then the missile starts flying all over the place and blows up. I mean, the shuttle, the rocket. Apparently they didn't realize that whatever the supply was, it liquefies during space launch, procedure or whatever, and that's what ruined the first shuttle. And they blame it on safety procedures or something ridiculous. Like, you'd think this would be something that you would just know, like something is going to turn into a liquid or not, right? I don't know how much of this movie is just absolutely ludicrous, but a lot of it seems ridiculous. Again, I'm not a scientist, I don't know for sure, but so much of it just seems stupid. It seems all for plot convenience, for the most part. Plus, he's out there on his own in the most stressful environment imaginable, and he never really goes crazy. That's another one of the big dangers of space, other than losing oxygen, right? Depressurizing and all that crap. Being lost in space, so to speak. Going crazy, because there's no one to talk to, and you don't have any connection to home. And in his case, he thinks he's going to die on a daily basis. He never really goes nuts. You never get any sense of that. Even at the very end of the movie, a year and a half later, when they finally make it back to rescue him, it's like he never left. He's still a normal, well-adjusted human being. It's really weird. This movie eschews all of the normal space disaster phenomenon and problems and all that for just craziness. And I don't know, it kind of works because it is doing something different. I've never seen a lot of these problems and solutions and all this before, so it is something interesting, I guess. But at the same time, it all seems so ridiculous. I don't know. Matt Damon, he's really good here. All the comedy relief comes from him. Making light of his situation, his dire situation. Well, at the very least, like I said, his situation is very dire in the very beginning when he doesn't have the habitat up and running. And then at the end, is he actually going to make it into space and onto the space shuttle and all that? And then somewhere in the middle when the habitat blows up. But for the rest of the movie, it's just kind of like business as usual. He's still on freaking Mars by himself, so it is still dangerous, but that's not really the driving force of the movie. It's just like the day-to-day. It kind of becomes about the mundane, but they still make it work. Through the levity given by, Matt Damon's character, and through, the heroics, and, the big hero moment where they all decide to turn around, they have to spend another year and a half of their life in space. They might all die. The mission will probably fail, but they all just unanimously decide to turn around because heroes, given the opportunity, obviously all humankind are just going to be the altruistic, ideal human being. No, one of them would have been like, nah, I want to go home. I mean, at least one of them. I don't even care if they're astronauts. I mean, they're people at the end of the day. One of them would have been like, maybe we should cut our losses and survive this, Or hell, NASA probably wouldn't even let them do it. They make this arbitrary decision to, they disable, the master controls or whatever for their redundant systems so NASA can't take over or something like that. That's the way they explain it. Like it would be that easy. They say something like she can hack into the computer system and, reprogram lines of code and remove all the control systems for NASA so they can just be doing whatever they want. They can just go and save him. I don't know if it's that easy. Hell, I don't know if NASA would even be able to find people who would be willing, who could get through the program and still be willing to break the rules like that. You'd think that they would just psychological profile the hell out of that, and they'd all be like mindless robots who do what they're told. I mean, like, you would think that would be criteria number 1, 2, and 3 for very obvious reasons. But no, every single one of these astronauts are perfectly willing to mutiny. Literally mutiny and just ignore NASA's orders and, go off to be heroes. I don't know. Like, their portrayal of human beings just seems a little too saccharine sweet. There's a little bit too much goodness and no counter to that. No counterpoint to that at all on the crew. I mean, even on, on the ground, in NASA or whatever, there is voices of dissent, but they're not loud enough. I mean, like, they should be screaming that we have 5 lives that we can save right now, as opposed to sending them on this probably suicide mission to save one guy. I mean, like, they should have been screaming, odds are really bad here. No. Like, get the hell back to Earth. We'll do it our way. They should have driven that point home like crazy, and they just didn't. So yeah, I haven't really talked about the acting yet, and really there isn't much to talk about in this movie. I mean, Matt Damon's pretty good here, but it's mostly the dialogue. It's mostly the writing. Not really him. He's not selling scenes. He's just reading the script adequately. And the script is just, it's edgy enough in parts, and it's funny in parts when it needs to be, and it's just adequate. It's just good. Good enough, I guess. Really, it's the story that will sell this movie. I mean, it's kind of a space disaster with a whole lot of weird science and the rescue in the end. The obligatory, space movie, hero mode, activate, rescue scene at the end. That's really the movie. It's not about the acting, and most of the actors don't get very many lines anyways, other than Matt Damon. You don't spend almost any time with the crew at all. You see them in the very, very beginning of the movie, and that ends very quickly when, they leave Matt Damon behind. And then you see them at the very end of the movie when they finally decide to turn around and go back and rescue him. So, they just don't play enough of a part. Really, Jessica Chastain, surprisingly, isn't really good here. She really needs to sell the emotional scenes, and she doesn't at all. She's supposed to seriously regret leaving Matt Damon behind. And the decisions she's making are supposed to be heavy, important, weighty decisions, and you don't really feel that at all. So, really, if there's a weak link here, unfortunately, it's her. Which is too bad, because I like her as an actress, but she didn't work here. The director, the guy who's directly under Jeff Daniels, I don't know what his name is, but he's pretty good here. He's definitely better than Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels is just kind of there. He's not doing anything spectacular. I mean, to be fair, his role isn't about big bombastic moments. It's just about being a decision maker, and he does it fine, but he's not anything special here. But his subordinate, the guy who has to go find the prototype, and the guy who has to talk to the Chinese, and the guy who has to talk to the computer geek who figures out that they can rescue Matt Damon and all that stuff, he's pretty good here. He's the one that gets emotional, and he's the one that's, seriously invested in each of the scenes. So, yeah, I think it's really about him and Matt Damon as far as the actors go. And they were both good. Not amazing. Neither one of them were amazing, but they were good. Good enough, at the very least. So, yeah. I don't know what to say about this movie. If you want a space disaster movie, this is not your movie. There's not enough of it here, and it's just not good enough. The space disaster portions of the movies, they're not good enough. Bottom line. It's more about... It feels more like a mountain survival movie. That's what it feels like. Like Everest. Or the one where they have to eat each other. Or that kind of movie. It feels more about that. More about surviving his situation than it does about, solving space disaster problems one after another. Which does happen here, but it's nowhere near as good as any other space movie. So, yeah. But, yeah, as far as, overall space movies go, I wouldn't put this anywhere near one of the greats. I mean, it's not gonna replace Apollo 13 from its pedestal or anything like that. Hell, it's not even as good as the recent Gravity. That was a great, really intense movie. Uh, but then this isn't trying to be that. It is something different. I do understand that, but overall, still, I didn't like it anywhere near as much. Way better than Sunshine, and probably I would put it over Interstellar as well, to be honest. Mission to Mars was a good movie. Really liked that movie, although it was more science fiction. But I don't know, that one didn't seem to get much credit, to be honest. Red Planet with Val Kilmer, kind of a hokey, ridiculous movie, but it was fun, and it's a movie that I'll go back and watch. Whereas I don't know if I'll ever go back and watch this again. I honestly don't know. Probably not. There doesn't seem to be any reason to. So I don't know. I have no idea if that helps anyone. Take that for what little it's worth. But there you go. Sorry, I'm tired at this point. Rant review. What the hell is this movie called? Oh, The Martian. Sorry. There you go. I'll see you guys next time.